Deciding what legend to pick up first or next can be a huge struggle, but by the end of this video, you will have some stellar recommendations as to what legend to unlock. Lots to talk about, and let's waste no time and get right to it. At the bottom, we're unfortunately going to have Rampart. Rampart just really is not too great right now when it comes to being one of the first legends to unlock, as she generally promotes a more passive or campy type of play. While she can be used aggressively, many and definitely newer players won't really be able to understand the best way to do this. Her passive enhances machine guns through increased mag size and reload. Her tactical amp walls boost some damage and can be used to strategically block off enemies. And her ultimate is a minigun that she can use to shred players if they are not actively engaging you. Rampart, in my opinion, is not worth a pickup early on, but if you have unlocked a few legends and are looking for a solid rank pick who can really block off areas and grind higher placement, then she is definitely worth a look at. Also, if you love machine guns like the Rampage, L-Star, the Devotion, even the Spitfire from time to time, she will be able to enhance that type of play and is again worth picking up. If you do want to farm those higher damage games, the amp walls boosting damage by 20% will really be a nice thing to have, and honestly, it can be pretty satisfying to farm players this way. And finally, while Sheila is pretty slow moving and takes a while to spin up, it can be an incredible third-party tool, but again, it's not really too clutch at playmaking when you are in a one-on-one scenario. Pick up Rampart if you are looking for a ranked pick, but otherwise, I would pass on her for now. The next legend is going to be Wattson, and for many of the same reasons as Rampart, she is a little bit lower in the general type of play sense. Wattson's premier ability is her tactile fences that she can use to block off areas of the maps, doors, or just hold people at bay very strategically, and I actually do think this is a very satisfying way to play, but this does require a lot of work to do effectively, and if you do want to hold up slightly larger areas, you are going to need her ultimate pylon. Her ultimate pylon, though, is the best part of her kit, where it can actually be used for a ton of different things, from healing your squad, blocking projectiles, and even just providing some cover. If you are unaware, Wattson can also get her ultimate back with a singular use of an accelerant, which is a pretty cool thing to have, and the way all three of these abilities work together is just pretty dope, and she does have a pretty well thought out and coordinated kit compared to some of the other legends. Unfortunately, the way Wattson is played is really just against the core movement and high-paced action type of play that Apex does have to offer, but much like Rampart, if you want a really great ranked pick with an even better emphasis on team support, Wattson is a pretty good pick for you. We now have one of the most recent legends to get buffed, and one of my favorite legends in Apex, Crypto. Crypto still isn't the greatest, but he really does have quite an interesting type of playstyle, and everything has to do with his tactical drone, which is both the biggest thing going for him and against him. Crypto's passive is tied into his drone, which is scanning enemies, and his ultimate is an EMP that does 50 shield damage to all enemies in range. Crypto can be a really good legend to pick up if you are slightly unconfident as a player who wants to support the team with some scanning and some general information gathering. That being said, he is pretty low on my unlock list, as you don't really want to be doing this too often as a new player, and you should be focusing on fighting, not just sitting in the drone. Crypto can at least now remotely send out his drone, which is a pretty underrated thing, to be fair, as getting even some scans in fight can be a huge thing for you and your squad. Crypto will take a lot to get used to, and he has a pretty high skill ceiling and floor to use effectively, so if you are looking to run him, be ready for a challenge. Much like the previous two legends, there's better legends than him if you want a legend with some recon. I definitely look at Bloodhound, who everyone gets by default. The second recon legend on our list is going to be Seer. Seer is actually pretty solid. In a lot of ways, he is worth being a little bit higher, but I have a hard time recommending him because, again, at the moment, the already unlocked legend of Bloodhound is quite a bit better. Seer is truly the ultimate legend when it comes to tracking and locating enemies, as his passive can locate enemies through walls with that heartbeat sensor. His tactical can also be a pretty big clutch maker, as scanning and seeing enemies' health bars is a great way to help you make more informed plays. Also, canceling enemies' abilities, heals, or even revives is pretty crazy. And finally, Seer's ultimate is really good for stopping third parties or general awareness of the battlefield. Even as good as Seer is, Bloodhound I think is a better recon legend, as all they have to do is simply just hit the tactical scan and they will get more information with less effort. Not to mention, Bloodhound's ultimate can be used a bit more aggressively. Seer is good if you are looking for an alternate recon pick, and definitely give him a look at if you do want this. Season 12's new legend of Mad Maggie is on deck, and while she is a pretty good legend, she isn't quite there in terms of meta. I do think a default legend like Bangalore is pretty much equal pick to her, and if not, a little bit better overall. Maggie's passive of increased movement with shotguns is super clutch though, as shotguns are extremely viable in the meta, unlike machine guns with Rampart's passive. Also, being able to briefly scan enemies through walls is nice, but I do think the scan time is pretty negligible for any real use. As for her tactical drill, this thing can be wild at endgames to get enemies out of cover, and when there is not much cover around, you can really make a massive play because of that drill. And if you do get someone knocked, being able to push up with her ultimate Wrecking Ball as the speed boost and slight displacement and stun of enemies is a pretty interesting way to play. Mad Maggie's abilities are all pretty solid, and if you do want an aggressive legend who isn't necessarily meta, but is a good time in pubs, absolutely try her out. Caustic is up next, and while Caustic is not as good as they were, say, last season or even a few seasons ago, they are still a pretty solid pickup. Caustic's passive is seeing enemies in gas, his tactical is the gas trap he can use to block doors, stop advancing enemies, and his ultimate is the gas grenade, which he can use to make plays or, again, slow down enemies. Out of the more defensive legends in the game, or legends who I would consider solid rank picks, I think Caustic is going to be the best. Caustic is not as good as he once was, but the overall type of play of a legend who is more of a hybrid in nature between aggressive, defensive, and even some support play is a quite nice thing to roll with, as he can kind of do it all. He will not be as big of a playmaker when it does come to being flashy due to his size. Caustic is a pretty methodical legend that is effective at lots of different playstyles in a lot of different areas. If you want a legend who can kind of do it all in both pubs and ranked, I think he's worthy. The Assassin, or Revenant, is now up, and much like Caustic, Revenant is not as good as they once were, but Revenant is a unique legend that kind of has a lot of advantages when it does come to fighting. Revenant's passive is higher climbing, faster crouch walking, his tactical is a silence that prevents ability usage for 15 seconds, and his ultimate is a death totem that players can basically use to make a free push. Revenant's real power right now does come from his passive higher climbing, as he can open an entirely different way of thinking and play when it comes to engagements, and a Revenant who is utilizing this ability will be able to surprise players in ways they just really will not expect. This, in conjunction with Revenant's tactical silence, means it can also stop the ability usage of pretty much every really good movement legend in the game, which is highly underrated as a tactical. Revenant's death totem though is not what it once was, but being able to make a free push is still pretty cool, and if you are coordinating it properly, it can still be very effective. If you want an alternate, aggressive, and even slightly a movement legend out there who is pretty fun in my opinion, give Revenant a pickup. Hitting the lucky 7 slot is going to be Ashe. Ashe has taken a little bit to gain significant traction in my eyes, but since her inception at the launch of Season 11, Ashe has been pretty solid. A passive to locate where players have died means you can better direct flow of matches, and the capability to ping death boxes, to ping enemies, ain't too bad either. Her tactical snare is semi-weak, but I think it's actually a little underrated, as holding a player in place means you can make an advancement on them or use the snare as an opportunity to separate players. As for that ultimate, it's an absolute unit to use this one-way portal to gain height, escape from danger, or breach into a building through a window. Ashe does have a pretty solid pub smashing kit, and I think anyone can enjoy using her. Her style is subjective, but I do feel it's pretty edgy and cool compared to some of the other legends that we have recently got. All in all, Ashe is a solid legend worthy of your pickup if you are looking for a fun, aggressive legend. If you're enjoying the video or you just want to support me and the content I create, do me a huge favor and hit that like button. It really does help getting the video noticed. And also, subscribe to be notified of all future content. I again appreciate the support. Narrowly missing out the top 5 is Mirage. If you did see my most recent tier list, Mirage is actually on the bottom in terms of general power, but I truly do think he is too much fun to not recommend anymore. Fun is subjective, but I actually think there is some value in Mirage for a newer player as well, and it mostly comes down to learning how to have an open mind and approaching fights creatively. Mirage is truly the master of deception with a passive of invisible reviving and respawning teammates, a tactical clone he can send out to just gather information or confuse players, and an ultimate that is pretty incredible at just confusing enemies and really having some good laughs in the process. He isn't for everyone though, and while he is weak compared to the meta, he can have some moments of brilliance that will satisfy. If you are wondering why Mirage is a bit lower in terms of power, it really comes down to that any experienced player more or less can pick out the decoys pretty easily. If you want a legend that will challenge you and open your mind to a new way to play, Mirage is a great pick for this. One of the best movement legends in Apex is next, and this is going to be Horizon. Horizon is a force to be reckoned with. That is the go-to pick for those really looking to be slippery and to take on multiple enemies at once. Her passive jets make her have better in-air movement, and she will not take any sort of stun effect when coming out of a fall. The tactical lift is a really great multi-purpose ability to gain height, transport the squad, or hop into it and get a heal off while trying to evade enemy fire. The black hole for an ultimate is a pretty weak thing, but it's still pretty solid at catching some enemies off guard and just creating some separation. Horizon has absolutely been slept on over the past couple seasons, and I think she is still an incredible pick for anyone really looking to excel their gameplay to the next level. Honestly, nothing really bad to say about Horizon other than maybe her skill level to excel with her is a little bit high. If you are looking to take Apex Legends movement to the next tier, pick her up. On the other side of things, there is going to be Loba taking our number 4 slot, as Loba is a really great legend who may not be top tier meta, but she still has a ton of usefulness, especially for new players. She can track purple and gold loot through walls, which helps massively during the early game, not only to gain loot, but to actually help you survive this crucial portion of a match. Her tactical is a teleportation bracelet, which can be nice, and her ultimate is her premier ability, the Black Market. She can place on the ground to pick up any loot in its radius. It's gonna truly be Loba's Black Market that helps excel her and the squad, as looting in Apex can be tedious, and any way to bypass this means more fights, which means faster improvement at the game. That being said, Loba's Black Market is still insane at the end game when armor swapping and getting ammo or grenades is crucial. I can't recommend Loba enough for a new player, and if you are truly looking for a legend to support your team that also has some movement, absolutely look at her for your pick. Our bronze spot is a legend who was actually the number 1 pick for a while, and this is gonna be Octane. Octane's abilities are dumb simple, which means you can't focus on Apex Legends' most important part, gun skill. That being said, the abilities of Octane are still really good. His passive is a health regen, his tactical is a stim to give you a huge speed boost, and his ultimate is a launch pad to help transport your squad around, jump onto enemies, or just use it for a tough rotation. Octane is not as good as he once was, but for me and many players, he is still highly picked because he is just a blast to use. Jumping on enemy teams and making huge highlight plays is too much fun to not recommend, and he has a very free-flowing, natural, and rewarding type of play. One big thing to be aware of though as a newer Octane is to not overextend in fights and try to play slightly more reserved. Octane's stim can easily make him get separated from your squad quickly, and this is something you do not want to have happen. Octane is your go-to pick if you want a great movement legend that is just truly a lot of fun to play. Taking the silver spot at number 2 is going to be the one and only Fuse. Fuse is just too good to not recommend for a new player as well, as much like Octane, he helps enhance one of Apex's fundamentals of grenade usage. Fuse's passive lets him throw grenades further, and he can hold 2 per inventory slot. His tactical is a mini grenade, the Knuckle Cluster, which is also just good at forcing movement and preventing enemies from pushing. It's also pretty good at dealing massive damage to those that are not moving outside of it. And Fuse's ultimate is a mortar that he will send out, which is a ring of fire to trap and scan anyone inside of it. And if enemies do walk into the fire, they will take some massive damage and take burn damage. Fuse is such an easy legend to use, and he will help new players learn all about grenade usage, which is very important at a high level in Apex. Not only this, Fuse is actually a pretty good legend now, and you can't often farm high damage games due to his clusters and his overall playstyle. If you are a lover of explosives, chaos, Fuse is a great pickup. And taking the gold at number 1 is the god spot and none other than Season 9's Valkyrie. Valkyrie is just too good right now to not recommend anyone picking her up first. She was recently free for a lot of players, but if you did not pick her up then, you absolutely gotta consider getting her. Her passive is a jetpack she can use to fly around. She can also target and scan enemies when she is dropping from the dropship or using a redeploy, and she can also scan beacons, which is all just incredible. Her missile swarm tactical is also god tier, and her ultimate of the movable jump tower means her and the squad can either push anyone they want or escape when needing to rotate. Valkyrie really has the complete package of abilities that are all just stellar, and anyone can succeed with them. That being said, she is going to require a little bit more skill to use effectively than a legend like Octane or Fuse, but the amount of usefulness she does bring to the entire team is just too good to not recommend. Definitely check out our guide on her in the most recent 7-tip video if you are wanting more on her capabilities and to get up up to speed with how she plays. Whether you do pick up Valkyrie though or another legend, be sure to pick the legend you want to play, as they are all pretty great right now if you are playing them the right way. Hop into the Discord to find someone to play with or to chat with, and if you want even more with what legend you might want to pick or even main, check out our how to find your main video on screen for you. Until next time, happy gaming, legends.